Okay, so this is our third CFA bonus class on the pre-course reading. Just a little recap of the methodology. So our methodology is split into 3 phases. We've got learning, practicing, and consolidating. So we're at the point where we're doing learning through pre-course reading. And the pre-course reading is to be done before the course starts. It's focused mainly on the factual content of the CFA curriculum. Okay, the more you can do before the course starts, the better position you will be in once the course has started. It will be easier for you because once the course starts, there will be a lot of content, a lot of concepts to understand, and those concepts are critical for the exam. So you're going to need to spend a lot of time doing practice questions on those specific concepts. So if you can do more of the factual reading now, it will really help you. Okay, and there's quite a lot of information on this slide here, but basically in total you should be aiming to spend around 350 hours studying. I've put 50 hours for pre-course reading up in this top left-hand table corner, the table in the top left-hand corner. It could be that you spend more time than that, or maybe a bit less, but I would aim for at least 50 hours of pre-course reading. Okay, so you can split that up according to how many weeks there are before, how much reading you've already done, how much time you've already spent, and then how many weeks we've got before the course starts on the 30th of January. The classroom course itself is 100 hours. We suggest you spend an additional 200 hours in total studying at home once the course has started. So 100 hours during the learning phase of the course and 100 hours during the revision phase of the course, which is in April next year, April and May. Okay, so in total 350 hours. Question, practice is critical. Of course, you have to understand the content as well, which will come from reading and from the classes. But you need to be doing lots of practice questions very soon after doing the reading, so you don't forget what you've read, and so that you make sure you have understood what you've read. Okay, the question practice is critical because ultimately you're preparing for an exam, and you have to be able to get the questions in the exam right in order to pass the exam. Okay, and that is our focus here. So we've already had a getting started class, which hopefully everyone has watched. If not, the recording is available and you can ask Bia for it. And then we've got 5 free bonus classes. So we're on the 3rd class now. Then once the course starts, we've got teaching phase, the teaching phase where we have 21 classes, and we have success in the exam classes then as well, which gives you more tips on studying at home and also using your calculators. And then we have the practice through the revision phase, which is 7 classes, starting, I think this starts at the end of April. And then consolidation next year, and then consolidation through practice exams. We've got 9 hours in total of exams, 1 final exam of 6 hours and 1 halfway there exam covering half of the content of 3 hours. Okay, and then we have exam debrief classes after those exams. So total number of class hours, 100 bottom. All right, so just a little recap. We've got the core subjects that we focus on in class on the left-hand side, and the non-core factual reading that the pre-course reading is focused on. So the pre-course reading covers these non-core subjects, which are maybe less frequently examined. They're not critical theories that are included in the CFA curriculum, but they could help you to pick up some extra marks. All right, so how are we helping you? We've got resource planning. We're helping you keep on track. Hopefully you're finding these classes useful. I'm not teaching in these classes, but I'm just reminding you that you should be studying and keep hopefully helping you keep on track a little bit with the pre-course reading and really helping you understand the importance of doing this. Okay, so the sooner you start, as I said, the more chance you have of being successful and the more pleasant the process will be. Okay, you don't want to be in a situation where you realize, oh, I haven't got enough time to study, and then you really have to either put in lots of extra time in a short space of time, or you might fail the exam. Okay, so the more you do now, the better. Okay, so we've got resource planning. Okay, before the course starts on the 30th of January, we will also, once the course starts, send you countdown emails telling you how many weeks there are to go before the exam and what you should be studying each week. And then we've got discipline. Okay, so basically we're setting the pre-course reading. We've split it up into months. So every month we're having 1 free bonus class to go through the pre-course reading. So that's should help you structure your studies. And then once the course starts, you'll get even more support with that. And you should be reading the content for each class before the class. so that you're prepared with questions, any questions you have, and so that you can absorb the material in the class more easily. Okay, you'll be consolidating what you have your studying, home study before each class. Okay, so if you can keep on track and follow the course with your home study reading intertwined with the classes, then it will really make your study more effective. Okay, in the classes we're focusing on the most important concepts in the exam. I would say if you 100% understand all of the concepts we study in class and you are able to apply them to the questions in the exam, you should pass without even reading the factual sort of additional readings. However, this is not a good strategy, because it could be that you get you don't fully understand a concept, or the question, you don't quite understand the question or whatever. So look, the more you can cover of the syllabus, the better. Okay, but you do not need to know everything in order to pass the exam. Okay, you just need to know most things quite well. Okay, you'll get more of a sense of that as you do more and more reading and practice questions and the practice exams. So practice exams, in class we do lots of practice questions with the teachers so that they can go through the approach to answering the questions and help you with exam technique. Because ultimately you need to be able to get the questions right in order to pass the exam. Okay, and then review. So we give you individual feedback reports on the mock exams that you do as you're going through the course. That's very important. It's really important for you to do those practice exams under timed conditions as well, because in the exam, although you might, if you thought for 10 minutes, you might be able to answer a question. In the exam, you have a minute and a half for each question. So you're really under quite a lot of time pressure. And so you need to be at the position where you're able to answer the questions quickly, which means you need to practice recalling the knowledge, and it needs to be at the top of your head so you can recall it quickly in the exam. And that comes through practice under timed conditions. So just a little recap of the classes we've had so far. So we're down here on the 18th of November, class 3, okay? Corporate finance and portfolio management. So I'm just going to go through briefly corporate finance and portfolio management, just an overview of each of those areas. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about equity, okay, which is, these are the readings you should be doing before the next class on the 16th of December. Okay. Hopefully, if you're still studying ethics, we talked in the first class about how to study ethics. It could be that you've not got through that yet. That's fine. Do a little bit each time you sit down to study. Okay. Ethics is an important part of the exam, 15%. Okay, so don't forget about that. Okay. Also, the two readings in quants that were set as home study on time value of money and discounted cash flow applications. The time value of money is kind of the theory of discounting, and then discounted cash flow applications is doing calculations with that theory. Okay, those readings are going to be useful, particularly when we come into equity, but also some parts of corporate finance. Okay, when you do net present value calculations and IRR, internal rate of return calculations. So hopefully you've done those readings already. Okay. And I'm not sure how far everyone got with the corporate finance and portfolio management home study readings. You should have done those by now to keep on track. Okay, but again, you need to work out your study schedule when you're going to do these readings. Just encourage you to make sure you are getting through them. Okay, and just a reminder, the course starts on the 30th of January. Any questions so far? You can type if you don't want to talk. All right. So pre-course reading. Sorry, this is very small. You can zoom in though. So these are all the pre-course, the readings that were set as pre-course reading, and you can see the suggested number of hours is actually greater in general than the pre-course reading number of hours. And that is because you will be coming back to some of those readings, whether it is in the revision course or whether it is in a practice exam, you will see those readings again, some of them, okay? And for example, here actually, we do have a class on ethics. So you are going, that's why we've got 10 hours on this reading 3, which is absolutely critical for the exam. So we will come back to ethics, but the more reading you can do beforehand, the better position you will be in for when we start to study ethics in class. Actually, the number of hours here is 25. So 25 to 50 hours is what you should be aiming to spend on the pre-course reading. So approach to the readings. I don't know if anyone has any comments on this, please type them, let me know, okay? I did have a bit of a discussion with João Paulo about how to approach the readings, and it's always good to hear people's experience of this because some people work in different ways, okay? This is our recommended approach, but you find what works for you. I don't encourage taking too many notes because that can really slow you down and you can end up taking a lot of notes and not really understanding the material. So take notes only on just the things that you find very difficult to remember and for formulae. Okay. So how you are going to learn this material is through practicing questions. That is the best way to learn rather than taking notes. It could be the actual process of taking the notes helps you absorb the information. So for example, I sometimes study by I read, and then I sort of, as I'm reading, I make notes, but I don't make them in a way that I'm going to refer back to them. It's the way, if you think I'm going to make notes so I can read them again to learn the material later, that is the wrong way to take notes. Because what happens is you don't go back, you've got to learn as you're reading. So if you're the kind of person who learns by just writing things out, then you can write things out just in a messy way or whatever, just so that it's going through your mind, okay? But don't ever think, oh, we'll come back to this, because you probably won't have time. You need to be thinking, trying to understand, work with the material by doing practice questions and by doing the examples in the readings so that you're learning and understanding at the same time. Okay? Learn by doing practice questions rather than by making notes. So what might you want to do when you look at a reading? Look at the learning outcome statements at the beginning so you know what the reading is focused on, what the outcome is of this reading, what you need to be able to do after you've done the reading. Then read through the chapter, focusing on the learning outcome statements. So you don't necessarily need to read everything, just focus on achieving the learning outcome statements. You need to keep referring back to them. Answer the questions at the end of the reading within 24 hours. Okay, so that's when you're learning, basically, remembering the information you've read. Instead of doing notes, do the practice questions. Return later and go through the questions you've got wrong or do additional practice questions. So you should be marking the questions you've got wrong so you can go back to them later. Now, later could be during the course or the revision phase. It doesn't necessarily have to be the next time you sit down to study. Just make sure they're marked, the questions you've got wrong, so that it's easy to find them later. And these are just some examples of learning outcomes down here. Okay, so corporate finance. Corporate finance is 7% of the exam. Okay, we've got 2 study sessions and 5 readings. The first study session 10 has 3 readings in it. So reading 34, corporate governance, just looking at this table down here. Reading 34, here, corporate governance and environmental, social, and governmental factors. An introduction. Okay, that is pre-course reading. Sorry, environmental, social, and governance factors. So that's pre-course reading. Okay, looking at, and it's basically a series of best practice for companies to follow. Okay, so it talks about good corporate governance procedures, and you need to be able to recognize what kind of actions a company should take in order to have good corporate governance. Okay, so really good to read through that. You don't need to know anything beforehand. Okay, so it doesn't rely on any prior knowledge. It's very factual. It talks about, for example, different types of board structures that a company could have. And make sure you do the practice questions so that you can examples, sorry, in the reading. But that reading is fairly straightforward. Okay, you might need to make some notes in that to help you remember some of the key definitions. There are some definitions in there that are useful. Okay. So that was it. That's it. That's been set for pre-course reading. The other parts are capital budgeting. Okay, so that's where you need the knowledge from reading 6 and 7, okay, because you're going to be looking at internal rate of return and net present value calculations. We cover this in the course, okay, so all of the other readings are covered in the course, but just to mention that you need to know some quants before you can do this reading 35. Okay. And then we've got cost of capital, how to calculate discount rates, which is quite interesting. Measures of leverage, so company, how leveraged is the company. We have financial and operating leverage, and that chapter, which we cover in the course, is focused on how to calculate those and what they mean, what leverage means. Okay, so it's basically the fixed cost structure in a company, okay, which creates additional risk for the company, because if regardless of how much the company earns, what the cash flow of the company is, they still have to pay these fixed costs. And then working capital management. So working capital management, current assets minus current liabilities. How is the company? What is its funding gap? What is its necessity to pay its suppliers in comparison to the cash and accounts receivable that it's got? Okay, how can it manage it better? This better, okay, because the company needs working capital in order to survive in the short term. It makes a sale, but it takes a while for the company to receive the cash from the sale. When does it have to pay its suppliers? It has to pay its suppliers usually before it receives the cash. So that is a working capital need for the company. Okay, it can be reduced by reducing the payment terms that the customers receive, so the cash is received more quickly by the company, or the company, for example, could negotiate with its suppliers in order to pay them later. Okay, so there are certain things that a company can do, and we cover that in the course too. So in the course, we've got 2 3-hour classes on corporate governance, plus you have, of course, the exam debrief class, which will debrief any corporate governance questions that people have problems with, corporate finance questions that people have problems with, plus a revision class. So that's just a little overview of corporate finance. How did people find the reading, this reading 34 on corporate governance and ESG? Send me some comments. Let me know if you read it in the comments, just so I've got an idea how you guys are doing. Okay, so Helen's not there yet. Okay. All right. Well, so make sure you do this one, because we're not going to focus on it at all in the course. This will be set 100% for home study reading. So if you don't read it now, you will need to read it during the course. And that will be difficult because you will also be focusing on all of these other important concepts in corporate finance. So these are critical for corporate finance. We focus on them in the course. Although corporate governance is critical, it's very factual. So it's not a good use of time in the course. And so you need to definitely do this reading, okay? And do it now so that you don't have to do it once the course starts. Strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that, okay? Because it is an important reading. It's just very factual. Good. All right. Okay, portfolio management. So this is 7% of the exam as well. However, I would say it's worth investing a bit more time potentially in this, even, well, not, yeah, you should be aware that this is going to come up again, okay? Particularly in level 3, actually, it's 55% of the exam at level 3. So very important to make sure you're comfortable with portfolio management. Even though it's only 7% of the exam at level 1. Okay, so there is 1 study session and 5 readings. Okay, and we've got a couple of readings which were set for home study. You can see these 2 here. That's the amount of home study time you should be spending on those readings. Now, it could take you significantly longer than just that amount of time. It depends how much time you want to put into it, really, because you can read just specifically for the learning outcome statements, or you can spend a bit longer, work with the material, kind of enjoy it almost. So it's up to you. If you're going to be very strict with your time, you need to be extremely focused with your reading, which means you have to approach your studies with a kind of very focused attitude. You need to be very alert. You can see how people study sometimes. Some people will spend the whole day studying and not be very effective. And some people will spend maybe 2 or 3 hours studying and be extremely effective. So these hours here are based on you working very effectively, which means you need to be 100% focused, not tired, really picking out the important details, actively reading, doing practice questions. Okay, so this is your approach. You need to be thinking about that as well, okay? If you have lots of time on your hands, you can spend longer. So just need to balance that, okay? All right, so the home study reading, okay, down here. So readings 39 and 40. Okay, so 39 is on portfolio management and overview. And so that's telling you about the context of portfolio management. What are we talking about here? So we're talking about investors and individual investors and institutional investors. We have portfolio management for individuals and families. And we have portfolio management for institutions, for example, banks, pension companies, insurance companies. Okay, so they have different risk and return requirements. And portfolios, with portfolio management, we have constraints, so time constraints, liquidity constraints, and you need to understand all of that. It's all very important in the portfolio management process. Reading 40 is on risk management. Okay, so very important in a portfolio is to manage risk. Okay, so you need to understand what that means and how we can manage risk in a portfolio so we don't have unexpected losses in value, okay, which could negatively impact the client, okay, the individual or institutional investor. Okay, and those two readings are just quite introductory, as it says here. So they will give you the context, and then in class we will build on that, okay, with doing getting into the calculations, portfolio risk and return. We've got part 1 and part 2, and the basics of portfolio planning and construction. Okay. So those are the more conceptual readings, okay. Okay, so just going back up here, so 1 study session and 5 readings, okay. So reading 39 gives you this overview of portfolio management, the process, okay, looking at risk and return requirements and also the constraints in the portfolio. We've got different types of clients, okay, which I already mentioned. So we've got individual and institutional investors. Readings 41 and 42, which will be covered in class, discuss the theory of risk and return, the risk and return trade-off. Okay, so if we take more risk, we get more return. We would expect to get, on average, more return. And there are some calculations as well, which we cover in class. So has anyone done any of the portfolio management readings yet? Has anyone not done them? Okay. So, all right. So just to get an idea with the studying, is it that it's taking people too long on the other readings, or is it that you guys are just not managing to study yet? Because the more you talk to me, the more I can help you. And I know time constraints, okay? So time constraints could be a challenge. Of course they are. The thing is that probably, although you might be optimistic about how much time you have in the future, probably you will have time constraints right the way through until the exam. So you need to find some time somehow. So it could be, if you really have no time, that you need to sacrifice something else. Okay, good with the ethics. I can see your comment here. So glad that your ethics is all right. That's 15% of the exam. Okay, now, so just regarding the time constraints, this is where you need to find some time. So it could be, I'm not sure how many hours of sleep you get a night, but sometimes when people are very constrained with time, they get up very early. And although you do sacrifice some sleep, you at least get your studying done. So I've heard stories of people getting up at 5 and doing a couple of hours of studying before going to work. Personally, that's not I don't like doing that, but some people do it. What I did, I spent Saturdays studying, okay, and that of course meant I couldn't do things with my friends and family on Saturdays, but it is a short-term sacrifice. So, and really, you do need to find some time to study, okay, so. All right, okay, so moving on to equity then, okay, this is the pre-course reading for the next class, okay, so I can see that probably you guys are not completely up to speed in terms of the program. Okay. So the idea was to do the equity readings before the next class, okay, but if you haven't done the corporate finance and portfolio management readings, then you should work on those. I would encourage you to try to catch up so that you are on track and you are able to do all of the pre-course reading before the course starts. You will find that time just flies. In life, in general, time flies, okay, and nothing's going to change regarding that. So if you get into a good habit with the studying, you will also find that another truism, another thing that works in life, is that getting into a good routine and having that regular study time, you will be surprised by how much you are able to cover. Okay, so it is just a question of making the time at some point and then just sticking to that, and you'll see that you get through the readings. Okay, so equity, 10% of the exam. Okay, so quite important for the exam. Also, it will be important at level 2. Okay, there will be where we will focus more on equity valuation. There is equity valuation at level 1 as well. Okay, but level 2 we'll be doing even more on that. So we've got 2 study sessions and 6 readings, 3 readings in each study session. Okay, so study session 13 is called Securities Markets. Okay, it doesn't have very many calculations. Okay, it has a lot of factual information. So it talks about different types of equity markets, for example, different types of shares. So the home study here is reading 44 and 46. 2 hours on each of those readings, 44 and 46. So 44 on market organization and structure. It gives you an introduction to equity markets. Okay, so very useful, especially if you are new, if you don't know very much yet about equity markets. There is a bit in that section on margin trades, which is a little bit complicated. We do some, it's not that complicated, we make it simple in class, but it could be you spend too long in studying that at home on your own. So please leave that for us to look at together in class. Okay, margin trades. All right, the other home study, market efficiency. Okay, so that's talking about strong form, weak form efficiency. So the idea of trading in equity is that markets are not efficient. Okay, that all information about equity pricing, all information about shares is not reflected in the prices. So you're able to buy an undervalued stock and sell it in the future for more, okay? Because there's something other people don't know, and that is how the stock comes to be undervalued. Okay. Reading 47. Okay, so we've got study session 14. Right. Study session 14, okay, we've got readings 47 to 48. Readings 47 and 48 are set as home study, okay, so we've got overview of equity securities. Okay, that tells you about different types of equity as well as preference, so ordinary and preference shares. Preference shares are not so common in Brazil, so you probably will find it useful to read about in particular preference shares and the different types, okay, which you're probably not familiar with. And then reading 48, Introduction to Industry and Company Analysis. This is a very interesting reading and actually extremely useful for valuation, for anyone interested in valuation, because it gives you lots of information, lots of frameworks for understanding a company and its industry. Okay, so for example, we've got pest analysis, political, economic, social, and technological factors that might impact a company or an industry. And Porter's 5 industry forces, which you probably have come across in other studies. Okay. So that's not very technical, that section, which is that reading, which is why it's been allocated as home study. Okay, we're not going to cover that at all in the course. Okay, so very good idea for you to read this on Introduction to Industry and Company Analysis. And there's a lot in these readings that were set as home study that we will not cover in the course. So really very important for you to read these ones. Okay, you don't need any knowledge before reading these readings. Okay, they start from quite a basic level. It'll give you a whole load of facts about equity markets, about shares, etc. And then, so study session 14. Study session 14 is focused on, right, well, I should have said that really before, but study session 14 is about equity valuation. Okay, so this is why you have the overview of equity securities themselves, what are the features of them. Then we've got industry and company analysis, because that influences the valuation. Okay, so how much is a share worth? Well, it depends on the company's characteristics and also the industry that the company is operating in. So that's why we look at that there. And then we've got equity valuation concepts and basic tools, which is reading 49, and we do cover that in class. Okay, so there's a lot of examinable material in that because there's some fundamental concepts in there. Okay, for example, the Gordon growth model, where we value equity shares depending on the dividends that flow to the holder of the shares. Okay, and this equity valuation chapter builds on quantitative methods from study session 2. Okay, so you need to be comfortable with that before we move on to this equity valuation, okay, which you will be, because we will in the course cover quants before we cover equity. Okay, so the 4 readings for home study, okay, readings 44, 47, 48, and 46, okay, on market efficiency. We do cover a bit of market efficiency actually in the course, okay, which is why you've got 2 hours for home study here and 3 for the total number of hours. And then we have 1 3-hour class during the course where we focus on equity valuation and also on margin trade, plus the exam debrief plus revision classes. Okay, so you will get everything you need on the real core concepts on equity valuation in the course, but there is quite a lot of pre-course reading to do to make sure you're comfortable with the factual part. There's also security market indexes, which I haven't talked about much. That's reading 45, so we cover that in class 2. So there are different methods of calculating movements in indexes, different weighting methods. So we weight the shares in the index, or the companies in the index according to, it could be according to the price of the share. We could give them equal weightings, or we could give them market cap weightings. Okay, so we need to weight them because companies have different characteristics. Okay, so the price of each share might be bigger, the market capitalization of the company might be bigger, and we need to use that to influence how we need to consider that in the calculation of the index value, the total value of an index of equity. Okay, so you'll find out more about that in the course. So any questions about this so far? How are you feeling about the exam? Does it feel like a long way away still?
Hi, teacher. So
Hey.
I think a little bit hard and it's a lot of content. I'm a little bit suffering this internal return rating, money value. To me, it's hard, but it's a kind of content that I use in the equity valuation. I don't know. Probably in the future, in our class, I will come up with it.
Okay, so what I would say on that, don't spend too long on those readings because you need to move on. So basically, if you haven't managed to finish the quants readings, just move on to the corporate finance ones and the portfolio management ones, and you can come back to the quants ones later. You really do need to keep moving, and you will come back to them. So we go back to quants in the course. You can't spend through 2 or 3 months just doing quants. And the equity valuation that we do in class does build on the quants readings, yes, but you will have had classes on quants as well by then. So it is not a good use of your time to spend a long time on your own reading the quants readings. Okay, so what I recommend is that you move on to corporate finance now. Just forget about quants for the moment, because it sounds like you're probably spending too much time in the details of quants.
Okay. So
Yeah.
I got it what you said, and I'm moving in the content. I am in the time class table. Now I will start equity and.
Oh, well, you are on track. Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah, I am on track.
Oh,
But I try to every week to move a little bit back to understand some point in ethics or portfolio, corporate financial reporting standard. But when I go to the CFA website to answer some questions, my score is good. I think that's good. But in the middle of those tests, I had some questions that I didn't study this, and after my tests I have to go and understand these questions that I don't studied or I don't know. But to me, that's okay.
All right, that sounds good. It sounds like you're on track. What are the tests you're doing?
I'm doing on website CFA Institute.
So are they the topic tests by topic?
Yeah, topic tests. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So the reason probably you can't cover everything is because the pre-course reading we set doesn't cover the whole topic. I think the topic test. Okay. I don't think you can pick which readings they're on. Can you? I don't think so. So the.
Oh, I got it.
Yeah, so for example, if you do the topic test for equity, it will cover all of these readings. So there will be things you haven't done. The most, what I recommend that you do the practice questions at the end of each reading. Have you done those?
Yeah, I have done this.
Yeah,
okay.
And are you finding? Yeah?
Yeah, no, I'm not finding so hard, but I have some questions that when I read it, I don't know how to do this, and I try to find the correct answer. And sometimes I can match, but.
Well, if you have a question and you're finding it difficult, let me know. Just send a screenshot in the WhatsApp group or send an email. It's good for me to know what you're struggling with, okay? Because also other people might have the same problems.
Sure, I will let you know.
Yeah, please do. Yeah, and just to recap, I guess. So the CFA, the online, it's available to all candidates. They're called I think they're called topic-based tests or topic-based tests, and they're by each topic. So we've got 10 topics in the exam. So there's one kind of test on the CFA Institute website for each topic, but it covers the whole topic, all of the readings in the topic. So what we recommend normally is that students do those in the revision phase of the course or during the course once we have finished that topic area. And usually, I don't know, because I think you're putting quite a lot of time in, which is good. So you've got time to do the readings and answer the practice questions at the end of the readings and do the topic tests, which is great. Keep doing that, given you have so much, you've got the time to do it. But for other students who are more time constrained, what the minimum you need to do the readings, the pre-course readings, and do the practice questions at the end. And you should be able to answer all of the practice questions if you have done the reading properly. You've covered all of the learning outcome statements. So every single practice question will relate to one of the learning outcome statements. Okay, so you should find that these questions, you're able to answer them once you have read this reading. Okay, and if there's anything you're worried about or you're finding difficult, just let me know. But like I said, the core concepts we will cover in the course. So you're just focusing on the sort of more factual parts, really. Okay. Any other questions, problems, concerns? I'm here to help you make you pass the exam or help you be as prepared as you possibly can be. Okay, and basically to do that, you need two things. One is you have to see the benefit, the value of what you're doing. Okay, so you invest the time, and the other is you have to study the right things. So you have to keep going, focus. All of those, all of these points actually that are covered right at the beginning. Okay, resource planning, discipline, focus, practice, review. You just need to follow this process. So I would say the number one most important thing actually is to have the motivation to do it. So you have to have something inside you that really wants you to pass. You have to want to pass, and you have to see, in order for you to want to pass, you have to see the value of it. And this qualification is valuable. It will help you immensely in your career. It will give you credibility. It will help you, which will help you with clients, which will help you with other jobs. It will give you the knowledge you need in order to work, to be effective in your whatever area you work in. It will also help you to connect dots between different areas, because you're going to have an overview of equity, fixed income, derivatives, portfolio management. You're going to see everything that you need to in the area of finance. So really it is, and there is no equivalent to this qualification. It's the best one for finance in the world. A lot of people have it. There are all the networking opportunities as well. So it really is worth putting the time in. So once you're convinced it's a good idea, and I know some of you at least definitely are, Then the next thing is to follow this process of planning your time, being disciplined, focusing on the right things, doing practice questions, and reviewing questions you got wrong. And it is quite a simple process. You just need to sit down, you just need to do it, okay? And we're here to support you right the way through the whole process, okay? So more than just with the technical things, also with the motivation and the keeping on track as well. And I do really encourage you, please ask me any questions. Keep in touch, okay? I really like to hear from students, so please keep using use the WhatsApp group. Feel free to. Don't worry about that, okay? The more you interact with me, the better. And it's never a problem. I like to hear from students, okay? So don't hesitate. All right. So anyone got any more comments before we close? We'll have the next class. Let me just return to the timetable to check the date of the next class. Okey-doke. Here we go, 16th of December, okay, 10 to 11 a.m., class 4 on equity, okay? So if you can tell me any problems you're having with equity, anything you want me to go through in that class, that will be really helpful, and then I can go through it, and I'll also give you an overview of derivatives and alternatives and what you need to focus on. Okay? All right, guys, so have a nice weekend, okay, and study hard, and we'll speak soon, okay?